This is going to be part 2 and hopefully the last part of this really weird short novel thing I wrote when I was in 7th grade. This other thing I wrote when I was in 7th grade, so let's get going. Last of Days, A Fine Frenzy, 2008. The day before Food's closing day, I walked through the automatic doors and into the almost empty store. The dairy section was empty, the produce room was empty, the bakery was empty, the lottery machine was gone. The middle aisles still contained some items, but we couldn't even buy milk without going to Green Hill. Or if you go 20 minutes the other way along a dirt track, you will end up at a dairy farm. At the farm, in the middle of nowhere, you can walk up to a little counter and buy some whole milk. But Mom says that isn't healthy. It is so strange that in 40 minutes you can drive from the dairy farm to Green Hill. I bought the last 3 rolls of paper towels, and I left the store without a word. I put the paper towels in my bag and started walking around strawberry fields and gardens. The strawberries had been greenhoused, and the field was now empty. I walked closer and saw there were 2 guys putting up signs. I watched them for quite a long time until they walked away, leaving the sign. It read, Carl's Wandering Aquarium, coming to town starting this weekend. Call 1-800-388-CARL for details. This being a Saturday, the aquarium was probably coming tomorrow. I thought that a wandering aquarium in the strawberry field sounded very interesting. I walked around Berry Lake, now thawed out, and ran over to Berry Lake Park, where I sat on a swing to contemplate what I was going to do about food the next day. Keep in mind, I was just trying to get a cheap walrus in there. There is no such thing as a wandering aquarium. It's like a carnival, but it's an aquarium. That doesn't exist. The playground was still there, but the picnic shelter was not. The renovators were going to move the picnic grounds closer to the lake while they expanded the playground and meeting house. I saw that some benches had already been moved closer to the water, but that day it was too cold for construction, so all was quiet. I glanced longingly at my tree, but I couldn't climb trees in the winter, and I still can't. You'll see why. I was so worried about my food rescue plan and so determined to keep it a secret that my stomach had tied itself into a knot. I began worrying that my plan wouldn't work. I began worrying that if I didn't leave the building, someone would throw me in jail. And what if the Magical Mystery Tour really did come? I couldn't pass up on a lifetime experience. Silly, I thought. But what if the police found me? Or what if I wasn't persuasive enough and the guy didn't listen to me? I felt so sick at that moment that I thought I might throw up. That's literally me, by the way. I was talking about anxiety. That's literally me. This really was the last full day that Food was open because they were closing at 3:30 tomorrow, and as far as I knew, the strawberries were reserved for me. I felt really sick, but it was worth it if my plan succeeded. And this is a folk singer my dad liked. I was listening to at the time. I don't like her anymore because it annoys me. Anyway, Top of the World, Patty Griffin, 2004. It was 1:00 p.m. on Sunday, and my heart thumped harder as the time grew nearer. It was almost time for the SFG SRP, Strawberry Fields Grocery Store Rescue Plan. I climbed the hill, past the falling rocks, signed past Barry's Cornplate Company, and I kept climbing until I reached the top of the hill, close to the place where I first learned that Food was closing. I sat on the hill facing Strawberry Fields. I didn't turn away. I could see my house and Maya's house and Bella's house and Lydia's house. I saw the nursing home and the daycare, ironically both on the same street where I also lived. I saw Food, its metal roof gleaming in the sunlight. I saw the town library and all the quirky shops and all the ordinary shops in Route 64 and Barry's Cornplate Company. I kept looking, and I could make out the Zygle on the other end of town. I saw Egg Street and Love Street being connected by Linkage Street, forming the letter H. I first thought H equals help, but then I thought H equals hope. Or H could mean house or hill or 100. My thoughts wandered into the distance until a blast of icy cold wind whipped through my hair. I looked down and saw Berry Lake Park under renovation. The weather was mild at the moment as snow clouds were coming in, but the workmen were still at work, and I saw the strawberry field now occupied by the temporary buildings of Carl's Wandering Aquarium. My thoughts drifted back to the SFG SRP, and I began to worry that I had never worried before. I thought, this plan is stupid, this plan won't work. I couldn't persuade my body to move, and I almost wished that the Magical Mystery Tour would come and make me move, make everything right. I could go somewhere where I didn't have to worry about food, but the problem was I was in Strawberry Fields already. They can't if you don't let them. A Fine Frenzy, 2012. The bitter wind from the west bit my body with a numbing chill. I remained where I was, thinking worriedly about what was to come. Within an hour it would all be over, like it or not. If I worried much more, I would sweat in the bitter cold. If I had to go to Food. I could run through Berry Lake Park, but it was in the process of renovation. That meant I had one option, going through the strawberry field. The time was near. I didn't remember about Carl's Wandering Aquarium until I was in the field. I pushed through the crowd and weaved through the crowd and yelled at the crowd. "Let me through." I saw a large gathering of people outside a certain building. People were yelling, "It's a walrus! It's a walrus!" I remember about the Rosmarine word. I kept running as fast as I could, and before long, I reached the front of food. I walked through the door, seeing nobody in the store. The manager was in the back cleaning out boxes. I found my squishy strawberries sitting on a shelf where cheese should have been. The manager had kept his word. "Why are you back here?" asked the food manager. "I need to buy something." Oh, right, that's you. I bought my strawberries at the counter and walked out into the vestibule where the heater blew. The food manager saw Mr. Grocer's car and left the store without noticing me, which was really fortunate. Mr. Grocer came to the exit first, leaving the enter door unlocked. I stood there and took a deep breath. "Hey!" I yelled. Mr. Grocer looked startled. "Take back the sale. Reopen the store now." I stopped suddenly. I heard footsteps running behind me. Chrissy tapped me on the shoulder. "Becca!" she yelled. "Becca, they're cutting down your tree!" 18. It's Alive. A Fine Frenzy, 2012. My heart screamed. I thought briefly of either of my earlier resolution not to move even if something terrible happened. Then I turned around and screamed at Chrissy. "Talk to him!" "What? No!" yelled Chrissy, but it was too late. I had already gone. I kept running down Main Street at the speed of light, or so it felt. Although I was sure I was going 15 miles an hour. Okay, it was probably more like 8. Anyway, I was running fast enough that I missed my turn. So I kept going until I reached the next side street. I couldn't be late. As I came closer to Berry Lake Park, I saw the workman standing next to my tree. "We'll take this one out," one of the men said. "This is a good place for the new picnic shelters." Finally getting close enough to be heard, I screamed, "No!" "What?" asked the tree guy. "Don't cut that tree!" I panted. "Oh, don't worry, there are still plenty of trees, and we'll put some new ones in around the shelter when spring comes. New trees wouldn't be big enough to climb for years." "Just don't do it," I said. "Why?" asked the tree guy. I backed against a tree and stood there. Wouldn't it be better to put a picnic shelter a few yards away? I mean, this tree is perfectly healthy and already big enough to provide shade already when summer comes, so that's one less tree to plant. "We'll think about it," said tree guy. "I'm not leaving until you promise me." It took a while. I did not see the Magical Mystery Tour or the police, and there was no celebrities or volcanoes, just the distant shouts from Carl's Wandering Aquarium. The ground did not split apart around me. Finally, the tree guy walked away. I followed him. Tree guy walked up to the street and sat down on a bench with spilled cornflakes. He got out his cell phone and began dialing. "Who is it?" I asked. "My landscaping boss. We need to talk about this tree of yours." A van pulled up to the curb, and tree guy got in. And that was it. Tree guy never harmed my tree. I danced and celebrated. It was beginning to snow as the wind picked up and tossed the trees in a torrent. Only then did I remember food. So this was a subtle Beatles reference here. Sitting on a cornflake waiting for the van to come is a line from I'm a Walrus, so he was sitting on some cornflakes, and yeah. Okay. Cold, Cold Heart, Nora Jones, 2002. I felt cold but confident as I walked back to food. There was no need to worry because I knew that Chrissy would fix everything and carry out my plan for me. I just wanted to get back so I could see what she was doing. When I reached the front door of food, it was locked. I peered inside, but I couldn't see anybody. I couldn't find Mr. Grocer's car, and I definitely couldn't find Mr. Grocer. I didn't see Chrissy either, so I started walking away, feeling the cold wind. Mr. Grocer would probably come back. I assumed that he was off negotiating with someone at that very moment. I still had the strawberries in my bag, and they were getting kind of messy. It turned out that Mr. Grocer's car had gone right down Route 64. I asked a neighbor, and she told me that he looked done. Chrissy was my best friend, so she knew about the plan, but looking at the deserted food, I knew that she hadn't carried it out. It was so cold. Mr. Grocer was gone. Chrissy had let me down. The SRP had failed. I burst into action and ran up the hill as fast as my legs would carry me. Over the hill and through the woods to Chrissy's house I went. When I got there, I banged on the door. "Oh, hi, Becca," said Chrissy's mother. "Chrissy isn't here. She went out to find you a couple hours ago." "Oh," I said, turning away. Chrissy was gone, too, and it was getting dark and colder by the minute. I ran to the walrus tank at Carl's Wandering Aquarium, where, sure enough, Chrissy was staring intently at the strange creature. I wanted to say, "It's just a walrus, what's the big deal?" but I knew that Chrissy was fascinated with odd animals. Also, walruses could have to do with Magical Mystery Tour, which had nothing to do with the town because it was named after Berry Fields, not Strawberry Fields Forever. Okay, maybe there was some sort of Beatles fan club town naming committee involved, but that doesn't concern me. "Chrissy!" I yelled. "What happened to the plan? What did Mr. Grocer decide?" "He didn't decide anything. He locked the door and went away." Chrissy's eyes were still on the walrus. Excuse me, Rosmarine, not on me. "But how long did it take? I mean, what happened to the store, the plan? Where did Mr. Grocer go?" Oh, that wouldn't have worked because, you know, the merchandise was gone, the workers laid off, it was too late for rescues, the store closed, like it or not, the store closed. It's an ancient building, and Grocery Boy it's not an ancient building, and Grocery Boy is a big company, so something will come in, but in the meantime, there's always Green Hill, and don't forget the transportation services, like, you know, buses and stuff. I really didn't know you were serious about the silly plan, and it wouldn't have worked. She went on explaining the positives in one long sentence, all that time staring at the walrus. I knew that Chrissy was right about the plan not working, but I wasn't so ready to hear it. And besides, I hated Green Hill. Without replying, I began running across the field as Chrissy followed me to the base of the old pine tree. I thought of Mom's no tree in the winter rule, and my experience as a tree climber, and the fact that it was cold, so cold, and windy, and dark, and icy, but Chrissy was behind me. I hoisted myself onto the lowest branch and climbed very quickly to the top and turned around too soon. Before I knew it, I was falling. I hit the ground with a bang, and I knew no more. Safe. Britt Nicole, 2009. When I awoke, I felt myself in a soft, warm bed. The first thing I remembered was that my tree was safe. The second thing I remembered was that food was not safe and it was Chrissy's fault. And at that moment, I hated Chrissy and everything she had done to me. It was less important. I was less important than a walrus to my so-called best friend. I heard a strange voice say, "It's lucky she landed in the field and not on asphalt because it could have been much worse." My mother said angrily, "She should know better by now because this is what happened before. The girl got an actual concussion. Well, I would think she would have learned a little lesson. That's it. My daughter is not climbing trees anymore." "Rachel, calm down," said my dad. "If it's the light of day and the weather's good, I don't see why she can't." "Not under my roof," screamed my mother. I wish they would stop arguing. The stranger said, "It's just a fracture in her arm. She can wear a cast." I opened my eyes and saw that I was in the hospital, the emergency room no less, and a doctor was examining me. "As for the scratches," he continued, "all she needs is a few band-aids." "All you need is love," said my mother, slumping down in her chair. "Whatever. Did she knock herself out?" asked the doctor. "Yes." "Has she been depressed?" "No." "Has she ever attempted suicide?" "No, never." "But she knows she shouldn't have been climbing trees?" "Yes." "Why do you think she did it?" "Maybe she was running from the Rosmarine," said Chrissy, entering the room giggling. "From what?" asked the doctor. "The walrus. Oh, never mind." Chrissy looked at me and said, "Your mother should know after all." She told my parents the whole story from her point of view, finishing with, "The plan wouldn't have worked." I wanted to hit her. "Don't be mad. When you got knocked out, I called 911 and got you off the ground." "I never thought that you would do such a thing again, Becca. I'm very disappointed in you," said Mom. "No more trees." I felt terribly disappointed of myself, and pleased too. I didn't know what to say. "I just hate Green Hill," I blurted out. "There's an Aldi up in Ivory," said Mom, "and don't forget, we have homegrown strawberries and plenty of them. I don't think we're going hungry. Oh, and the tree is absolutely fine." "Don't call it the tree, call it my tree," I said out loud. Write your story. Francesca Battistelli, 2014. And so we came to the end of my grocery saving. Chrissy is still my best friend because she called 911 for me. Chrissy was right in a good way. Grocery Boy has a new store called The Big Munch coming to town in July. In the meantime, we all use the Aldi in Ivory Heights and the Walmart in Green Hill and Mary's Dairy out in the country. And we live. Mom might be relaxing a Never Climb rule. Chrissy still hasn't returned my Magical Mystery Tour CD, but it's fine, it really is. I have it on iTunes. Walruses are actually pretty cool. My tree is getting new buds, and it stands next to the new picnic shelter. If you ever meet Alison Sudol, tell her I like her music. It is time to say goodbye, but you can say hello because my alias, Sarah Priest, is always writing new novels. She will always tell you another story. The end. The beginning. What? I don't know what the heck that was. So anyway, that was the end of that. That wasn't very good plot-wise. I think the writing was actually not bad. I did some good dramatic stuff there. I actually really did with that. And the other thing I want to say about that is that was the first time I knocked out a character. I'm pretty sure that was the first time I knocked out a character. And if you know me, if you followed my Loki and Ingrid fanfiction temporarily on hiatus, yeah. I knock out characters a lot. So anyway, the next one is where my writing started getting more serious, so